Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good day and welcome to the show. Welcome to the Delta Report. I got a lot to talk about today, and I'm just gonna freestyle it. And, I don't have generally on my shows, I don't have any script. I just basically freestyle it on just about every show I ever do, and I do not that much editing out. Of course, on my main show today, I did edit it out a few things that I said. The other on financial turmoil explained, but sometimes you have to. Anyway, here's the thing: we're in big trouble, big trouble. And there's been all this talk about nuclear and everything else. I want to talk about one thing that's very important that a lot of people don't realize is all of humanity, every single human that's on the face of this earth is all part of a larger organism. Have you ever watched bees? Did you know a beehive, all the bees in a beehive, and there might be thousands, tens of thousands of bees, they are all actually one unit. People don't realize this. They function as a unit. Ants do too. And what people don't realize is the human race actually functions as a unit. It's like, what it makes up, the entire of humanity, 8 billion of us around the earth, we all actually make up something that goes unseen to science, is this, how am I trying to explain it? This, like we're like a large organism. They went down into the sewers and they seen this big thing that they took a picture of, and it moved all in unison, and they thought they'd found a new life form, some sort of alien life form or whatever, because when they shined the cameras on it, the thing would move all in unison. But what they found out was it was a big giant ball of worms, and all the worms moved in unison. You also see this with schools of fish too, like a big large school of fish, and they'll all move in unison. Well, your body is made up of all individual cells, billions of individual cells. But if you poke a pin, say into your leg, your whole body goes through a spasm. The whole thing will spasm. That's what it is. It's ouch. You go, ouch. Oh, I just stuck a pin into my leg. Well, that's all the cells acting as unison. Well, all the humans on Earth are all the same way. They're all like, each individual human's like an individual cell in a larger organism. And that's that reflex action that occurs. Even with smaller organisms, if you say you got some sort of microorganisms in a petri dish, very small amoebas or something like that, and if you hit them with an electrical charge or whatever, they'll spasm. But each one of them is made up of an immense myriad of countless smaller cells. What I'm trying to say is humanity is being pushed, squeezed. We're being squeezed financially, and humanity is nearly hitting their breaking point, that there is something wrong. They know that there's something wrong, and looking at it from a macro perspective, that humanity, they're like a giant microorganism. Now, nuclear can actually act as a triggering mechanism for this, I'm going to call it, phenomenon that we haven't witnessed as of yet. But if a nuclear weapon was used, humanity right now is coming. This whole thing is coming from several different fronts. One is people are noticing that it's getting more difficult to feed your families. and there's uncertainty for the future, and this is creating a tremendous amount of fear. Fear is acting as this pin. It's like when you stick a pin into your leg, those particular cells that are damaged put out a signal, and that signal goes to all the cells in your body and causes that spasm. I'll call it a spasm that goes through, and your brain, it signals to your brain an enormous amount of pain, and it causes that spasmodic reaction. If somebody gets stuck with a pin, or somebody say they step on a thumbtack, ow, a signal goes through. Well, that signal can go through humanity, and fear is a tremendous motivating force. It's an extreme motivating force, but there's a flip side to that coin. So if you look at fear as heads on the coin, the opposite side of that coin is tails. So if you have a coin, you have a head side and a tail side. Everybody knows about when you flip a coin, right? The opposite side of fear is anger. It'll express itself. So people will often have anger at things that they fear the most. They'll also be angry the most at things that they fear the most. And what's going on right now is, around the world, is the governments around the world, and it doesn't matter what country you're in, are making the people frightened because they're losing their sense of security. And this is creating a tremendous amount of fear. Now, if a nuclear weapon goes off, that's going to act as a signal for all the people on Earth. They're going to say, oh my gosh. And that is stimulating a tremendous amount of fear almost instantaneously through the human race. It's like sticking a pin in somebody's leg. It's like that same sort of a reactive force that generates a tremendous amount of fear. The other side of that reaction is going to be anger. All the people on Earth, they're not going to know what to do. Their legs are going to be trembling if you have a nuclear bomb go off. But we're in a situation now where it's an escalatory situation that's happening in the world without relief. There's no backing off. It's everybody on both sides of this divide of between East and West is doubling down each time. So Russia doubles down, and then NATO and the Western allies, they double down, and they've been continuing to do this for a while now with no backing off. It's leading to something. And also this fear reaction that I'm talking about among all the people out there. Because the people of Earth, everything is basically the same as it was 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago. The people just want to raise their families with peace and security, and peace is being robbed away from them. And they're watching this happen, and they don't seem to have any recourse in this, because it's all of the world leaders that are doing this, and they're taking these actions without any input, or at least very little input, from the people themselves. The world leaders are caught in this tit for tat between East and West and escalation. And now it's moving to a new level. And this new level is Russia is arming these submarines with a doomsday weapon. And it says Russian nuclear submarine armed with doomsday weapon disappears from Antarctic Harbor. So they've launched it into the water. This Russian submarine has got doomsday weapons. This doomsday weapon is called a Poseidon. It's an immensely powerful nuclear weapon, capable of creating nuclear tidal waves and destroying coastal cities. It creates a radioactive tsunami. It's a drone that can be deployed from the submarine at any time. It can be detonated at a depth of 1 kilometer near a coastal city. Russian state media has claimed the device can create a 1,600-foot high wave that smashes into the coast and irradiates it with radioactivity. It's a 600-foot long submarine. It's a top secret program aimed to develop and operate a series of new classes of superweapons that the Russians have devised. And they're going on. See, this is all part of this escalation. And the way I see it, in the next few months, possibly in the middle of this winter, possibly around Christmas time, or maybe slightly into the New Year's, they could keep escalating this thing until finally they get to the point where some sort of a tragic situation happens that alerts all of mankind quite suddenly, and mankind is going to go into this, what I call spasm. A fear-generated spasm that spreads around the world to just about every citizen on Earth, if it goes this far that I'm talking about, this situation. When that occurs, then the fear very rapidly translates into anger amongst the people of the Earth. And, I mean, where am I going with all this ultimately is the anger can lead to situations that can cause chaos. This winter, tragically, what I'm talking about is it's not just in the situation that's happening in Ukraine. It's also a fear that's going to be generated when the world starts to go into a period where people can't afford to feed themselves because of inflation. There's no way out there either. Like in this situation that's happening over in Ukraine with this war that's rapidly escalating, moving into a newer positions of what will generate fear. At the same time, we have something happening into the financial system that's going unnoticed by most people out there. They do notice the inflation, but they don't really notice what's causing it, and they're wondering if it's going to get worse, or a lot of people think, well, the Fed's fighting it, it's going to go away. I'm here to tell you it's not going to go away because the Fed is trapped. If the Fed decides that they can't go any further with this, what they're doing with this quantitative tightening and with this raising interest rates to try to fight inflation, if they lose the battle, and they could be very well close to being on the verge, and I said that they are going to lose the battle before the end of this year, then we're going to see inflation like we've never saw before. If you think inflation's bad, you haven't seen nothing yet. And this adds icing to the cake because an awful lot of wages will not keep up. And part of the government's reaction is to put in wage and price controls, but that doesn't help. Price controls will not help because what it'll do is it'll make shortages. If you saw what happened in Venezuela and what's happened in Zimbabwe, and if we look back in time to one of the greatest hyperinflations of all was what happened in Weimar, Germany, you can see that this will add a new layer to what's already happening with this war and the nuclear weapons. This adds another layer to this. So what we're talking about, if one situation all by itself is not bad enough, the war and the anxiety and fear that's going to generate, if that's not bad enough, we're going to add this second layer to it of economic and financial instability and food insecurity. We're going to add all that in. And now what we're going to talk about is the energy problems. So all of this is going to occur in the middle of this winter when it's really cold. Really cold. And the people in Europe can't afford to heat their houses any longer. We're talking about untold millions of people who are going to have so cold. We're talking about such cold coming up. I'm going to tell you, you guys, honestly, normally we don't get a hard frost here until just after Halloween. We've already had our hard frosts here in Nova Scotia. This is a signal to me that this winter is going to be an unusually severe winter around the world, and of course in Europe too, because another thing is the Gulf Stream out there, which carries the warm water to Europe. See, Europe, what you don't realize is Europe is in the northern latitudes. The Gulf Stream's slowing. It's not as effective as it used to be at carrying heat to Europe. And at the same time, they got this energy crisis in Europe. It could be an extremely severe winter in Europe as well, as here in Canada. We get these Arctic polar vortexes now that form in the wintertime. Severe storms. But in Europe, these severe storms have been showing up all summer. They've been getting these crazy ice storms where hail's been falling from the sky. Weird looking storms and weather effects around the world. And a severe winter is not that unlikely in Europe. Much more severe than normal. But at the same time, they got the Nord Stream pipeline that was carrying gas to Europe to help keep their homes, is now gone. You can't count on that anymore. Plus, Russia's not going to be pumping the gas into Europe. All these problems are coming together simultaneously. It looks like it's focused on this winter, specifically in around December or January and February. Those 3 months look like we could have not only a financial situation, but also an escalatory situation in the war that's occurring and actually threatening to become a World War III. I'm listening to generals on here that are talking about this, and they're talking about scenarios that could happen. And it's very, very frightening, the situation, you know. How is all this going to pan out is you on a personal level. It's time to really get serious. If you guys are just watching my channel for the first time, it's time to get really serious about preparing. What you need is emergency medical kits in your house. You need alternative ways to create electricity. Possibly a solar system. You need have food and a source for water. You need to concern yourself with security for your house and for your belongings and for your loved ones. You need to think about how are you going to even get from one place to another if you can't get gasoline. Your car isn't able to function. How are you going to be able to go anywhere or do anything? There's so many things coming at all of us. And at the same time, we could be talking about civil disruption, civil disobedience, and civil unrest on a scale that we've never ever seen before in our lifetimes. A lot of these things are going to probably pan out this winter and early spring. And by next summer, you'll be sitting back and saying, hey, Glenn told us about this stuff. We didn't realize it was going to be this bad. Because things don't seem that bad. Most of the population is oblivious right now to a lot of these problems that are occurring. But they're really going to manifest themselves this winter. It's all coming to a head. It's all coming to a culmination, period of culmination. It looks like this winter and early spring. And don't say I didn't warn you guys. because I'm putting a warning out loud and clear that we could have this phenomenon occur too. What I call it is, I don't really know what I would label it, because it's a phenomenon that nobody's ever seen before, where all the citizens of Earth basically uh, spasm from the fear that's generated from what happens this winter. Because people get to a point where they can only take so much. See, okay, down around my shoulder here is showing scenes from Florida where they had a hurricane. You know, tremendously bad hurricane. My heart goes out to these poor people, because I was just through a tremendously bad hurricane up here in Canada. Does some strange things, you know. My power line, somehow it hooked on the eave of my house. I don't know how it did that. I was like looking at it, and I said, how did the hurricane do that? How did it force that power line down and into that position? I said, it must have been a downdraft of significant force of 100 miles an hour or more, you know, to do that, to stretch that power line. I had to wait for the power company to come fix it. They had to fix it. They fixed it. Thank goodness. I feel really good about that they fixed it. It wasn't real hard. It wasn't a real hard thing for them to fix, but for me it was big, you know, and I'm glad that they got that fixed. But I've been through the hurricane, and the hurricane was tremendously damaging here too. We had houses wash out to sea, many of them. Lives lost, but not as bad as what's happening in Florida. What happened in Florida I consider to be a little bit more devastating, but my heart goes out to those people. But what you see with these people down in Florida right now, to emphasize my point, is these people are being patient in Florida. They're waiting for help. Sometimes a boat will come in, an airboat or something, and it'll pick them up and take them to a place where they can get food and water and stuff. And they're waiting for power to come back on things, because they know what it was that, and they know that there is the people in their minds that they're in the crisis area in Florida know that this is a hurricane, and they know that there's a typical procedure that occurs in order for them to get back on their feet again. And it's very severe, it's horrible, but they have a certain mindset. They know that it was a hurricane. But this whole worldwide crisis that's coming is different. And the fact that it takes away all of the people's security, because they don't even know if there's going to be a future. See, the people in Florida, they know that there's a future. They know they've made it through the storm. They're going to get help, and they can see a future. But when you rob that future from you rob a future so that people don't even know if there's going to be a future. In other words, they think, oh, there's a nuclear could be coming. We're going to go into a nuclear winter. They think, okay, we could all die. You're robbing them completely of their future. That's when people really lose it. To emphasize my point. And this is a situation that we could be facing that triggers this spasm. I don't really know what I would call it. Worldwide spasm, where the population of everybody on Earth just gets to a point of fear and frustration because they can't feed themselves. And this is the 99.9% of the population will be undergoing this. Meanwhile, while we have the privileged few, who are causing these situations, enjoying every minute of it. Or perhaps, if they're not enjoying every minute of it, still they're not being affected by it like the 99.9% that's going to be undergoing the spasm. I could call this spasm, maybe the best term I could call for it is a human stampede, or a call to action that hits them out of nowhere, and they just cannot resist it because the fear translates into an anger energy. This could be a tremendous phenomenon that could occur. Nothing can stop it at a certain point. And I see the trigger for this would be something like maybe a nuclear weapon being used by either side. That could act as a trigger. The financial system breaking down completely and utterly could also act as a trigger. So we got more than one thing that could trigger this reaction amongst humanity. And don't underestimate the power of a reaction like that. That's all I got to say. But at this point, it might be inevitable because these two situations that are causing these problems, one is the financial system and the other is war, I don't see them going away in the immediate future. In fact, I can see them getting worse, specifically a few months from now, getting much, much worse. And it might even happen sooner because we're living on the precipice. Basically, with these two situations that I've been talking about, the financial situation and the war situation, it's almost like a sword of Damocles hanging over humanity's head. Anyway, listen, thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the very next episode. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.